Okay, so as promised from my previous video, I will be covering DZBT04 top 10 best card in this video, and I'll have to admit, this is a really tough booster to judge because most of the support are very unit specific and there's not a lot of generic cards except for one obviously. So where you want to put any of these cards is really up to you, but personally for me, this is how I'm gonna be arranging these 10 cards as the best 10 cards from this booster. So as usual in my top list video, I'm gonna be just focusing on one main aspect, and that is no more than 3 entry per nation. And without further ado, let's go through what I would consider to be the saddest booster at the moment of Divine's era. Starting off, number 10, we have a surprise support. Because this archetype has been getting way too many support, at least for my taste, and a lot of these things could have gone for some other right line that need more support. Silverhorn Beast, Rashi, or I would like to call him the Sonic. This card is essentially a grade 1 unit that allow any of the Magnolia decks to essentially hit hard at least once because of his ability to restand after attack once, allowing you to use Rashi to boost anything that is in front of him. And I would say this for Magnolia does help because it makes a number really big, but at the same time it is also a way for Magnolia to use energy in a little bit more efficient way, which is pretty good but doesn't make the deck stronger. Especially considering there is another card that does use energy in this deck that I feel does have a lot more use, namely Flopboy Lilikoi, the fruit PR that Magnolia get recently. And that's why I say Magnolia have been getting way too many support, but compared to the rest, Rashi is definitely better than many of the double R cards that I don't want to really put in this list,
together with my restriction.
That's why I'm leaving him at number 10. Okay, so for number 9, for a normal eye, you guys will see this is just a big stick and shield. But if you look at it from another angle, this card does have the use, but I feel this is a situation where you have to understand from both sides. And in case you are wondering, is Nebula Invoke Dragon?
Are you fucking dumb?
This is the Impaudio Grade 2 WR support that Impaudio received as part of his starting kit, and it does work great. It is a 25k attacker in mid to late part of the game, which is really good, and it is a 20k shield unit as long as you have 4 or more modification gauge, which is pretty juicy for a grade 2, especially it can synergize with a few of the unusual generic support in bracket as well. But the biggest thing about this card is the Soul Blast.
Nani?
You see, Nebula Invoke is one of the few units that is capable of Soul Blast in the earlier part of the game, allowing you to set your drop early so that you can use your system code XC to set up your gauge. And that is where I have to deduct a point. You don't really want to play such a powerful card in the earlier part of the game. Fortunately enough, we have been seeing some of the great suggestions from people like Muter, and those cards does work relatively well into the deck itself. It's just that once you dedicate that job to someone else, Nebula Invoke is just a beast stick, and there's nothing else much I can talk about it. So that's why he's at number 9 on the list, purely for the fact that he can help to do the setup, but people do prefer him to play as a late game unit. And in case you're guys wondering why I said he, I mean come on. After considering what the deck has initially, this feels a little intrusive. The only reason I'm willing to put this card in this list is because of the fact that you are giving a filter to a deck that already draws a lot, and that's Twin Impulsive Dragon for Vaga.
Interesting.
Vaga is one of those decks that already draws a lot, and filter does help the deck a lot, especially it helps you to guarantee cards like Rocky Sail on the field, essentially leads to consistent intercept blocking, which surprisingly enough is something I feel is heavily underappreciated in the current meta, especially with all the rush and everything.
That doesn't sound so bad.
But for some reason, it has to use energy of all things. As much as you don't really use that much energy, but you do use enough for this card to not be a regular activation. Like we have things like Farhad, we have things like Shura that you're gonna be using relatively regularly. So having Twin Impulsive Dragon using Energy Blast to do a filter is nice, but it is very intrusive, and I feel it is definitely not the most ideal, and that's why it is in 8th place of the list. It's still good, it's just not ideal. Number 7 is a card that I feel completely opposite of Twin Possible Dragon. Like, Twin Possible is good, but this card works well in the flow of the deck it supports. Meanwhile, also generate more and more resource for the deck in general, and that is where we swing Balatiel, the Divine Skill booster for Lichia. And among the Divine Skill booster in this set, I have to say this is definitely the most useful one.
A bold claim.
As it essentially is a free draw and a counter charge for a deck that generally use a lot of resource, since Lichia do use a lot of resource thanks to her skill. Not only that, you do not have to leave it in the back row center, so that does mean that you can use it 13k boost to give it to your rare card instead before you start putting into soul via Lichia skill.
It was perfect. Perfect.
So in general, Balatiel is just a card that works so well and remove all the fuss that some people may have with the Divine Skill booster, and essentially make it, in my opinion, to be one of the most free Divine Skill booster among all the Divine Skill booster as like mini quote-unquote archetype in itself.
That's just confusing.
I got a feeling people have a lot of beef with me thanks to the way I talk about this particular deck. I will say this again. Equilibrium is good, but it's still mid.
That escalated quickly.
And number 6 is a card that is the reason why I feel Equilibrium has some place in the meta right now, and that is Dragritter Shaalhub. This is a restander from the Overcharge archetype, and it also has ability to get additional 5k in the earlier part of the game as long as you have 3 or more Overcharge units on the field. And this is where I feel is a really good part about Shaalhub. It's a very powerful and solid number rush, allowing your opponent to really force a lot of cards from their hand in the earlier part of the game, making guarding a really juicy attack in the later part of the game a lot more troublesome. And this haven't talked about the restand that he does have.
But wait!
The only issue I have with the card is that, similar to Abelina with Lichia, I wish this card has a bit of a split power gaining scaling. Like, instead of getting 10k in one shot when restand, I wish he get 5 first before he get another 5k. But that's simply just me. So I would say Shaalhub is a great card. It's just there's a few elements that I wish it could have been ironed out a little bit better, and that's why he is at number 6.
Here's Johnny.
Interior's Cadence Rass. This is a Lion support where it has ability to search for any Leonon card as early as turn 2, and is essentially an evolution of Friendly Broccoli. In case you don't know, here's the photo. This card, based on some of my friends mentioned, is essentially a replacement. I feel both can be used if you do use Plants Token Engine, but regardless, it's still a very powerful unit regardless.
Why not both?
Ability to get Leonon in the earlier part of the game, which is most important thing because you get filtered out early, and it does refund as a draw if you fail to do so. And it is a self 15k boost with additional 5k shield on top of its base shield value as well. The only reason why I'm putting it at number 5 and not any higher is because of the fact that Broccoli really exists. As much as it is an evolution, it's like a middle evolution, you know. It's not so insane that bring Leonon to the next level, because Leonon already is that high up. It just makes the process of the deck a lot smoother, and that is enough to put him into number 5, but not enough to put any higher. For this particular deck, this deck has went through quite a lot. Like, the evolution of the support that this particular deck has received has been very intriguing in general, as not only each of them are a hit, but for some reason it doesn't hit hard enough for the deck to actually become a dominant force in the meta, but it always been a very powerful dark horse, and that's Velstra. Number 4 on this list is Blitz Publicist Fentlichta. This card essentially is, in my opinion, the final step of Velstra evolution in terms of support, as it may counterblast heaviness in the deck not as prevalent as before. And not only that, Fentlichta is also taking advantage of all the discard costs that you have to do with cards like Freiheit or the new Uber, and turn it into a resource itself, as she can self-call herself from the drop when she is being discarded during your turn.
It's actually quite nice.
The only drawback I would say with Fentlichta is that it feels like it's a start of a next product that Velstra is gonna be getting. That's how I feel, because I cannot really think of any other way that Bushiroad can do to improve Velstra unless they are introducing us a brand new product. But that's just me. So do leave down in the comments whether if there is gonna be a new product that Velstra gonna be receiving, what kind of effects is gonna be. You know, one of the most surprising thing about this list is that I did not expect to put 2 dusted cards as a top 3 card.
That escalated quickly.
There might be bias involved, but I feel if you have tried this particular card in the deck that is supposed to support, you will agree it's an insanely strongly card. And number 3 is Diabolos Playmaker Elite. And yes, a lot of people might disagree with this, but hear me out on this one. Ellie, similar to Lagras, allow you to filter out in the very earlier part of the game, but instead of just specifically Lianon or like one boss unit name, Ellie help you to filter essentially every single Diabolos unit you can find in your deck. This is actually a huge deal, especially considering Ellie does chain into another Ellie. So this means that you can actually do multiple filter within one single shot, provided you have enough energy.
Genuinely disgusting.
And the best part about this card, aside from the filter, is the fact that this card generally can be used in multitude of ways. It can be used as the fodder for all-in skill, it can be used as a 15k booster if you burst, or 10k booster if you are rushing. Essentially, once you use its filter skill, its presence on the field doesn't intrude the game plan in any way whatsoever.
It's amazing.
And because of how flexible he is on the field, he is definitely a playmaker, and that's why I'm willing to put him in number 3 on this list. So who are the 2 cards that is better than him? Well, one is the card that we all can consider a generic, and the other is one of the destined one. But who is that destined one? Number 2 on this list is tough one. I already mentioned just now is a destined one, and I would say all of them are not very good.
Emotional damage!
Like at the movement, it feels like there are not enough cards that really play into the playstyle of each of the destined one as much, but one managed to just barely edges out the most likely people's destined one favorite in the current meta, Impaudio. And for me, I feel Alden edges out Impaudio just by a bit. Being the only one that evolved from the previously known unit, he definitely does a solid job of revamping his playstyle. As for most of the Keter deck that superior call, many of the boss unit has to be a driver that really do a good job in doing the things for the deck, and I feel Alden does exactly that. Even though his defensive skill is really bad and not fit his moniker, everything else about him synergized extremely well with Keter's Sanctuary, as not only he generates his board quite consistently well, he also extends the attack decently on top of recouping the cost and giving just enough power for Alden Regard to actually do its own thing or hit a disgusting number. And the most important part of all is his first skill that returned the card that was called over by Regard that was superior called by Alden's skill. That synergized so well with Keter powers because most of the Keter power units are an on-play skill, at least some of the strongest one, and this allow you to reuse this over and over again, providing you trigger his first skill condition properly. And that's why I feel Alden is the best destined one out of the 5 we have right now. And this is considering Bushiroad literally hard cuck Alden in terms of support, where other destined one are eating well. Like for example, Balatiel is good on Lichia, but the DY booster that Alden gets suck ass, like really suck ass, is barely usable. And the same can be goes for the unique destined one order as well. So there's a lot that hold Alden back, and he still managed to shine and able to top 16 in some of the Japan tournaments. And I think that alone deserves respect, and that's why he is my number 2 on this list. But in all fairness, from number 10 to number 2, everything doesn't matter because the base card of this list is way better by a huge mouse. And that card is of course Rock Dragon.
Of course!
I think everyone can agree that in DZBT04, this is the most useful card. I mean, it is a more expensive card right now as well. And the reason why Rock Dragon is such an insane card kind of boils down to 2 things. And that is, it is being a very insane support for Blackmire, more or less gaining the same amount of power as Blackmire does, albeit in a different interval, and it helps to call cards from Soul. And that is where he truly shines, because that core skill is generic baby.
Why, that's very good.
Yes, you technically do need Blackmire Vanguard in its name to keep the unit on the field, but the point is that the drawback is barely a drawback. So any deck that do use strong unit that has to go into soul, you can reuse it with this particular card.
Yes, I like that.
And that alone makes this card really good because it essentially grants all Dark State deck a way to utilize a Pale Moon Call from Soul Stick in their deck, even if they are not supposed to do that.
It was perfect. Perfect.
But what do you guys think? These are my top 10s, but what are yours? Do leave down in the comments below. And yeah, that's all I have for today. Take care of yourself, don't forget to clap that sub and become a member for some cool perks. And this is Mac Mechanic signing out.